All right, everyone, this is round 11. I just want to make sure I have Maryland Gold and Pennsylvania Blue. I'll be reading. I'm Chris, and scorekeeping, who's usually reading, is Ophir here.
I'm Ophir. I have not too much of a voice left right now, but
Bug/frog, and frogs eat bugs, so it all works out. And but here we go. This is question number 1. Good luck, everyone. In a novel by this author, Wilfred and Minna both love the same inhabitant of a Norwegian castle, but disagree on the gender of that character, Serafita. Evelina Hanska wrote letters to this author signed The Stranger, in which she praised his portrayal of Marie Vernia in a romance set in Brittany, but criticized the portrayal of the heartless woman Fedora in another novel. In that novel by him, a man planning to drown himself finds a piece of Levantine shagreen, which can grant wishes but shrinks over time. In another novel by this author, Madame Bouquet's boarding house is where an elderly vermicelli maker meets the criminal... Balzac. That's right.
Nice.
And your bonuses, as president pro tempore of the city council, Wilson Frost was set to become this city's first black mayor on the death of the incumbent, but was literally locked out of his office because he was denied the keys for 10 points each. Name the city whose local politics were covered by journalists Mike Royko and David Axelrod. This city's first female mayor, Jane Byrne, lived in the Cabrini Green housing project for 3 weeks as a publicity stunt.
Chicago.
That's right. Mike Royko's Boss is a scathing biography about this longtime Chicago mayor whose death prompted the Frost incident. This mayor shouted profanity at Senator Abe Ribicoff after being accused of using Gestapo tactics during the 1968 DNC.
Daily.
That's right. And Jane Byrne and Daley's son were defeated by this first black mayor of Chicago in the 1983 primary. This man's Sunrise campaign buttons inspired the design for Barack Obama's 2008 campaign buttons.
Washington.
430.
Nice.
Lesson number 2. The Supreme Court case Nordlinger v. Hahn held that these policies can help preserve local neighborhood stability. A 1990 survey of American economists found that over 93% believe these policies...
Rent control.
That's for 10.
Oh.
Very good. Your bonus is this researcher confused female bee wolves by manipulating the visual landmarks they use to find their burrows for 10 points each. Name this biologist who proposed 4 questions in the analysis of animal behavior. He shared a Nobel with Karl von Frisch and Konrad Lorenz. Answer? This is Nicholas Tinbergen. Lorenz discovered the critical period during which the newly hatched gray-like species of these birds imprinted on the first appropriate moving stimulus they saw, such as his wading boots. Answer?
Ducks.
These are geese. Egg rolling in gray-lag geese is an example of this instinctive behavioral phenomenon described by Tinbergen and Lorenz, in which an organism performs an invariant behavior in response to a assigned stimulus or releaser.
NAP.
These are fixed action pattern, or FAP, so 0 on that. We go to number 3. This man was targeted by a 300-strong opposition research bureau led by James Edmonds and Zachariah Chandler. A cartoon showed him eating from a red-hot bowl labeled "My Own Words and Deeds." This man was the addressee of Abraham Lincoln's letter stating, "If I can save the Union without freeing any slave, I would do it." Later, he advocated that the North and South clasp hands across the bloody chasm which has so long divided them in a convention speech, reflecting the view that led him to sign a bail bond for Jefferson Davis. This...
Greeley.
That's right. 410. And your bonus is allegories of pity and terror flank the title woman of this painting, who is holding a dagger and a cup for 10 points each. And this 1784 painting, which depicts a Shakespearean actress as Melpomene sitting on a wide throne and wearing a brown gold dress, looking upward solemnly.
Sarah Siddons of the Tragic Muse.
Sarah Siddons as the Tragic Muse is by this painter, the founder and first president of the Royal Academy. He also painted Colonel Acklin and Lord Sidney, the archers.
Reynolds.
That's right. And in his lectures to the Royal Academy, Reynolds put forth this vision for art, referred to by a 2-word phrase. It emphasizes generalizing to ideal forms, using visual metaphor and overt symbolism for noble virtues, and following after classic Renaissance art.
Epic art.
This is grand style. What you got? 20 on that. Going to number 4. This denomination summarized the sources of its identity in a resolution known as the Lambeth Quadrilateral. This church has a tradition of holding lesser feasts for non-canonized spiritual models, called divines. The liturgy of this church was heavily influenced by the Sarum Rite. Edward Pusey was a thinker from this church who led its Tractarianism movement, along with a priest who later left this church, John Henry Newman. This denomination, individual churches of which are often characterized as high church and low church, depending on their level of traditionalism, uses the Book of Common Prayer for...
Anglicanism.
That's right.
Yeah, that's just-
Your bonus is this poem says that the dead ask themselves, what do I remember that was shaped as this thing is shaped, for 10 points each. Name this poem which describes its title plant, which grows in the underworld as like a buttercup upon its branching stem. In this poem, the author says, all women are not Helen, I know that, but have Helen in their hearts.
I think so. Defer. Asphodel, that greeny flower.
That's right. Asphodel, that greeny flower was written by this American poet, who also wrote an epic about his hometown of Patterson.
Williams.
This Williams poem describes its title object on which so much depends as glazed with rainwater beside the white chickens.
The red wheel there.
4:30. No.
Do it later.
Sounds good. Number 5. In this modern day country, King Ibrahim Nioya established the idiosyncratic Bamum script. A campaign waged during World War I in this country included 2 battles fought at Garura. Social Democratic Front leader John Fruneedy narrowly lost the 1992 election to this country's current Christian president, who was surprisingly selected as successor to his first Muslim president. In 1960, that president, Amadou Ahidjo, led this country to independence from France, a year before it joined with a southern neighbor.
Lebanon.
That's incorrect. Joined a southern neighbor, which had been a British colony. In 1986, over 1,700 people and 3,500 cattle were killed in a limnic eruption from Lake Nyos in this country. For 10 points, name this country, which was once a German colony and is led by Paul Biya from its capital of Yaoundé.
Cameroon.
That's right.
Because Paul Biya has been in power since 1992, I think. That's nice.
Your bonus is answer the following about the Shih Tzu breed of dog for 10 points each. The Shih Tzu was probably developed in China from the breed of Opso named for this Asian city. This city is also known as the Patola Palace, which was once the seat of a spiritual leader.
Lhasa.
The Shih Tzu is currently known in China by a name referencing this one of China's 4 beauties. This princess of Yue was captured by King Fuchao of Wu, who was induced to make several poor decisions by her beauty.
Yang Li Fei.
No, I have... She's sure, yeah.
Okay.
Make sure the other one wasn't also accepted. When they were first imported into Britain, Lady Brownrigg named the Shih Tzu for these flowers. A book by Ruth Benedict about Japan was titled for this flower and the sword. For 20. We go to number 6. In a play by this writer, a character says, there are limits to what a mule or an ass will stand, but man will suffer himself to be degraded. This author wrote a play about a Christian slave who helps an animal with a wounded paw, which then spares him in a gladiatorial execution. This man endowed the creation...
Shaw.
That's right, over 10. Your bonus is the roots of the Ibadi sect predate the Sunni-Shia separation for 10 points each. Name this only country that is the majority Ibadi. Its sultan rules from its capital of Muscat.
Oman.
Right. Ibadis are also a large part of the population on this country's largest island of Jerba, home to a substantial ancient Jewish minority as well. That island borders the Gulf of Gabes on this country's Mediterranean shore.
Lebanon.
It is Tunisia. This inland region of Algeria is populated by Ibadi Muslims who primarily live in 5 major walled city oases called Qasr, with the largest of which is Gardia.
The Maghreb.
That is...
Nope.
Yep.
Nope.
No, yes, yeah.
It's Mazab.
Mazab, not Maghreb.
Never.
410. We go to number 7. This is the final letter of the point groups, which contains xenon hexafluoride and the eclipse conformation of ferrocene. Several equivalents of an amino acid symbolized by this letter bind nickel beads in a common IMAC technique for protein purification. That amino acid symbolized by this letter appears with aspartate and serine in the catalytic triad of proteases such as chymotrypsin, and it contains an imidazole side chain. An element denoted by this letter displays the largest kinetic isotope effect. Shaking a sample with heavy water can cause certain...
H.
That's right.
It's histidine is the element in the catalytic triad.
And the element is hydrogen.
Symbol it was, but-
Your bonus. This thinker argued that the family was the central reactionary germ cell for the reproduction of authoritarianism in a book that got him expelled from the International Psychoanalytic Association for 10 points each. Name this author of The Mass Psychology of Fascism, who argued that neuroses are caused by orgastic impotence and the suppression of sexual desire in the sexual revolution.
Definitely. Adler.
It says Wilhelm Reich. Reich's lectures helped shape a form of therapy developed by Fritz and Laura Perls named after this German word. A school named after this word explained patterns of perception through the law of Pragnots, included Max Wertheimer and Wolfgang Kohler.
Gestalt.
Reich's character analysis influenced the work of this psychoanalyst who clashed with Melanie Klein over child psychology and enumerated 10 defense mechanisms. A dream she had before she turned 2 appeared in her father's interpretation of dreams.
Oh, and Freud.
That's right, 420. Number 8. A man reads a book while half sitting on a table with one leg on the floor at the far right of this painting in front of a blackboard. When this painting wasn't expected for the Exposition Universelle, its artist and his patron opened the Pavilion of Realism nearby. Champfleury, Proudhon, and Baudelaire.
The Painter Studio.
That's right. 410.
Hey, Corbett came on. Corbett.
Your bonus is John Waynesboro founded a revisionist scholarly movement that argues that this book could not have been entirely written until at least a century after the traditional date. For 10 points each, name the scripture, first revealed by an angel in a cave and later compiled under Uthman. Most Muslims believe that this text is uncreated and thus co-eternal with God.
The Quran.
That's right. Almost every surah in the Quran begins with this phrase, usually translated in the name of God, the most gracious, the most beautiful. It is numbered as the first ayah of the Quran, but is otherwise not numbered.
Bismillah.
That's right. And this surah is the only one not to begin with the basmala, which along with length suggests that it was originally connected to the surah preceding it, Al-Anfal. It refers to a controversial figure named Uzair and contains the sword burst.
The 9th surah.
That's right. Or Surah Al-Tawbah, and that's a 30. We go to number 9. The order to speed deliver the creation of this object was supposedly given by Kevin Chmielewski, and a memo warned Reginald Allen that this object would be scrutinized by the media despite being a legal purchase. This object's creation required floor support to handle its roughly 600 to 800 pound weight. Christine Todd Whitman pointed out that this device was superfluous since a similar facility already existed in the building, and a project architect proposed using white noise instead to save money. In April 2018, the GAO ruled that the creation of this $40,000
Like Pruitt's soundproof box.
Yeah,
To make calls.
yeah, that's fine. Yep. Your bonus is Northrop Frye argued that this genre was characterized by a movement from pistis to gnosis, or false belief to awareness, and a chapter from the Anatomy of Criticism on the mythos of spring, for 10 points each, named this genre, which Aristotle proposed was derived from the phallic processions of Dionysus. Its varieties include satire and farce. That's right. This author of Dyskolos was the foremost representative of Athenian new comedy. Answer? This is Menander. This French philosopher wrote that the methods of comedy are repetition, inversion, and reciprocal interference in his essay collection, Laughter. This author of Matter and Memory was awarded the Nobel Prize in Literature for some reason. Answer? This is Henry Bergson, but you gotta tell him that. On a great Scott Pruitt soundproof video toss-up. Number 10. A profile related to this effect is given by the double integral of the electron momentum density. This effect can be seen graphically by its namesake plateau preceding the point of maximum energy, called this effect's edge. An effect opposite of this one causes distortions in the energy levels of the CMBR during movement through the gas surrounding galaxy clusters in the Sunyab-Zeldovich.
Compton scatter?
That's right. Your bonus is the probability that a randomly chosen integer between 1 and n has no repeated prime factors approaches the reciprocal of this number as n tends to infinity. For 10 points each, give this number that equals the Riemann zeta function evaluated at 2.
So pi squared over 6.
That's right. That result follows by manipulations involving this mathematician's namesake function, which outputs 0 for numbers with repeated prime factors and plus or minus 1 otherwise.
Bernoulli.
This is August Mobius.
Oh, sorry.
6 over pi squared is also the asymptotic probability that two randomly chosen numbers have this property, meaning their greatest common divisor is 1.
The co-prime.
That's right. 420. And that is 10 toss-ups.
The score is 65 for Maryland Gold and 220 for Pennsylvania Blue.
All right.
You want me to read toss-up 12? There's a lot of stuff in there. You can defer to me if you want me to read it.
That's fine if you want to.
Go for it.
Here we go to number 11. This was the homeland of a man who immigrated to Italy and invented the trumpet, Tyrannus. While serving a monarch of this land, a hero defeated the evil vineyard owner Salius, journeyed to Ephesus to defeat the ape-like Cercopes, and perform the burial of Icarus. After the king of this place, Timaeus, was gored to death by a bull, this place came under the rulership of a queen who forced her servants to dress in women's clothing and assist her with spinning wool. Heracles was indentured to Omphale in this land, where Candaules contrived to have Gyges see the queen naked. For 10 points, name this realm in Asia Minor where the very wealthy Croesus ruled.
Lydia?
That's right.
Oh, Lydia.
Your bonus is this scholar is credited with inventing the question mark for 10 points each. Name this master of the palace school of Aachen, who according to Einhard was the most learned man anywhere to be found. This abbot's letters to Higbald provide an account for the Lindisfarne raid. Answer?
Ansel.
This is Alcuin of York. Alcuin was a leader of this period of rebirth of scholarly activity in the court of Charlemagne. This period names a minuscule script developed during it.
Carolingian Renaissance.
That's right. After the defeat of Desiderius, this Benedictine abbot of Monte Cassino spent some time in Charlemagne's court. This scholar's contribution to the Carolingian Renaissance was the Historia Langobardorum. Answer?
St. Jerome.
This is Paul the Deacon. That is 10 on that. You might be more suited for these words if you want to.
Also 12. This man signed the secret treaty of Dovidishkes, sparking a coup by his uncle that resulted in this man arresting and killing Kashtutis under the presence of negotiations. Like Oleg II of Ryazan, this ally of Mamai never arrived to aid the Golden Horde at the Battle of Kulikovo. Disputes over Samogitia led this monarch to fight the Golub War and the Hunger War with the help of his cousin Vitaudis the Great. This man concluded the Peace of Thorn after defeating Grandmaster Ulrich von Jungingen of the Teutonic Knights at the Battle of Grunwald. The Union of Crewo arranged for this king to convert to Catholicism and marry Queen...
Vladimir the Great.
No.
Oops.
Queen Jadwiga. For 10 points, name this king who first united Poland and Lithuania and founded a namesake dynasty.
Piast?
No, it's Jogaila or Jogielo.
Yeah.
Alright, back to you.
Appreciate it. Number 13. An unusual mosque in Nishapur, Iran is named for its use of this material. Though he almost exclusively worked with other media, Taudao Ondo designed a truncated conical museum of this material's culture in Kansai. Peter Zumthor's austere Bruder Klaus Chapel is made of this material, polished on the outside and rough on the inside, and multiple examples of Orthodox churches built primarily out of this material can be found on an island in Lake Onega.
What?
That's right.
Good job.
Your bonus is, in the last movement of this piece, a Gliss-Laden solo tenor trombone passage is meant to represent a staggering drunk person. For 10 points each, name this piece that includes a mandolin solo in the third movement, October Harvest Festival. This piece's first movement, Circuses, opens with fanfares from 3 buccine that are usually replaced with trumpets in modern orchestras.
Festivals of Rome. Sorry, Festivals of Rome. Festivals of Rome.
That's fine. Roman Festivals is the third in a trilogy of pieces about Rome, including Pines of Rome and Fountains of Rome by this Italian composer. Yep. In the Pines of the Janiculum for Pines of Rome, Respighi specified that a phonograph recording of one of these animals be played as the movement ends. A Handel organ concerto in F major is titled for a cuckoo and one of these animals. 430. Number 14. People whose official jobs were to attend these events were equipped with kintone, or patchwork quilt, and acetum, a vinegar-based substance. When these events occurred, a Siphinorius played a key role, as did a group of collectively known as the Spartoli, many of whom carried hooks and picks to destroy things during them. These events were the original reason why Augustus found the
The gladiator battles?
That's incorrect. Vigiles. Crassus formed a group that only responded to these events if paid a great deal. One of these events led to the first Roman persecution of Christians, who were blamed for starting it. The Emperor Nero probably did not actually fiddle during, for 10 points. What kind of event? That's it.
I was thinking.
Your bonus is the first of these wars involved an early form of chemical warfare when wells were poisoned at the siege of Cura for 10-point siege. Name these wars fought between the Amphictyonic League and its enemies over disputes relating to the shrine of Apollo. The first Pythian games were held to celebrate the end of the first of these wars. Answer? These are the sacred wars. Most of the sacred wars arose over violations of this city's sovereignty. Much of this city's wealth came from pilgrims traveling to visit its oracle, properly known as the Pythia.
Delphi.
That's it. And this monarch intervened in the Third Sacred War and acquired Thessaly after the Battle of Croesus Field. This king obtained hegemony in Greece in the Fourth Sacred War, which ended with his victory at the Battle of Chaeronea.
Philip
More.
of Macedon. The
More.
second of Macedon.
There we go. Thank you. 420. Number 15. An activity in this play is described as the refuge we take when the unreality of the world weighs too heavy on our tiny heads. A character in this play tells another about a schoolmate of his who accidentally killed both his parents and described a telegram which mentions that someone swerved to avoid a porcupine.
Oh, Who's Fifth Virginia?
That's right.
Oh, yeah, the son of it.
Your bonus is this supposedly nocturnal creature wanders from camp to camp, eating the wooden parts of unattended tools for 10 points each. Identify this dog-like creature, named for its similarity in appearance to the tools it consumes, with a wedge-shaped head and a long, thin body.
Axe hound?
Sorry, this is the axe-handle hound.
Oh.
The axe-handle hound is a fearsome critter along with the hen behind and the hugog, originating in tall tales told to pass time and mess with newcomers, and it's part of the folklore of these people. These people cut down trees and process them into usable timber, sometimes handling transport to sawmills.
Lumberjack.
Indeed. The consummate guide to lumberjack folklore is Fearsome Creatures of the Lumber Woods by William Thomas Cox, the first state forester of the state. A Swedish immigrant in the state discovered the Kensington runestone, which is inscribed with a questionable account of Vikings visiting this state in the 14th century.
Minnesota.
420.
Alright, the score after 15 is 240 for Pennsylvania Blue.
I have 280.
Yeah, I have 280 as
Yeah,
well.
280. Oh, I wrote the wrong number down. 280 is right. And 125
I have
for
I have 115 as well.
115. Okay. I had 65 at the half, right?
Yeah.
Then 95.
Oh, I had 85.
Let's check. Bonus 11.
Did we get 10 or 20 on bonus 11?
Oh, you only got Carolingian Renaissance, right?
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
So then I do have 115. I can also read the next question if you'd like.
All right, everyone ready? Here we go. Number
So
6.
115 to 280 is the score, right?
All right, here we go. Number 16.
The movement following this one begins with the calm French horn solo, long F, G, A, long B flat, answered by flutes following seventh chords. At the start of this movement's coda, the massive dissonant chord, A flat, D flat, long G suspended to F, over C, slowly subsides, then returns to quadruple forte in spasmodic blows. In this movement, quick triplets and trumpets clash against a euphonium solo over steady string quarter notes. This movement shares an unusual meter with the polar opposite final movement, which uses an offstage chorus. This movement starts with a 39-bar...
Neptune?
No.
Oh, that's
39-bar crescendo tam-tam roll and a percussive ostinato of col legno strings playing straight Gs in 5/4. This movement was the temp track against which John Williams composed some of the ominous music in Star Wars. For 10 points in this...
Mars.
Yes.
Yeah.
Nice.
Okay, back to you.
Yep. Your bonus is objects in this group include Barnacle Bill, Pooh Bear, and Stimpy for 10 points each. Name these objects found on Mars.
Oh, craters.
These are rocks. Those rocks were analyzed by this rover. Silicon Graphics developed control software allowing Earth-based operators to operate this rover from within a virtual reality environment.
Curiosity.
Sojourner was sent to Mars by NASA with this lander. This lander performed the first airbag-mediated touchdown and was the first in the aborted Mesor series. And yes, you are.
Pathfinder.
That's it for 10. Toss up number 17. This number is the only value of P for which the norm space LP is also an inner product space. If any 2 points in a topological space can be separated by neighborhoods, the space is T sub this number, which means the space is Hausdorff. The smallest finite field has this number of elements, which is also the size.
Oh, like 1.
That's incorrect.
Don't neg.
Which is also the size of the smallest untrivial group. The power set of x is denoted by raising this number to the x. A commonly taught example of proof by contradiction is to show that the square root of this number is irrational. This number is the Euler characteristic of a sphere, and for any convex polyhedron, it equals the number of vertices minus the number of edges plus the number of faces. For 10 points, give the number of points needed to uniquely define a line.
2.
Indeed. The one after one.
Was that?
And your bonus. The negatively rational process by which the second of these concepts overtakes the first is described with the term Aufhebung or sublation. For 10 points each, identify this opposing pair of terms that often describes the first two stages of GWF Hegel's dialectic. This pair of terms was actually first used by Johann Fichte, who described their union as a synthesis.
Antithesis. Thesis and antithesis.
That's right. Hegel's dialectic built upon the four antinomies identified in this book, which Hegel criticized for its refusal to see those contradictions as inherent to the world itself. This book uses a number of transcendental arguments to counter empiricist skepticism.
Ooh, I think it's critique of theories. Critique of theories.
That's right. And in Soren Kierkegaard's Either Or, this character uses Hegel's term Offenbang to describe the effect of marriage on romantic passion. Victor Eremita discovers a bunch of letters this man sent to the seducer A to persuade him of the value of the ethical stage.
Ooh, I didn't read all about it.
Answer?
Isaac.
This is Judge Wilhelm. You got 20 on that.
They could catch up to us if we don't.
Number 18. Armenian examples of these objects unusually have steps on top for shelving and are surrounded by a ritual curtain. In Eastern Orthodox churches, these objects are covered by a katastarchion, which is never removed but is considered a baptismal garment, and under that covering on these objects is an antimenes, a decorated piece of cloth where a relic sewn into it. Before Vatican II, these objects were built with special compartments to hold consecrated stones. After Vatican II, examples of these objects attached or adjacent to a wall are not sufficient for the new liturgy, which demands that priests stand opposite these.
Altar?
That's it.
Darn, I was thinking that. There used to be a requirement every altar had to have a relic.
Your bonus is, in one of this author's stories, Wang Zhaozhe posed as a married woman in order to seduce the collaborator Mr. Yi, whom she plans to assassinate. For 10 points each, name this Chinese author of Lust, Caution, and Love in a Fallen City. Answer? This is Eileen Chang. Chang wrote a study of this classical Chinese novel by Xiao Shunxin that centers on a boy who was born with a stone in his mouth.
The Dream of the Red Chamber.
That's right. And Jia Baoyu, the protagonist of Dream of the Red Chamber, shows his idleness by reading this philosophical text, named for its Taoist author who sits dreaming of a butterfly. Answer? This is Zhuang Su, and that's 10 on that. Toss up number 19. An observation that this phenomenon occurs with constant probability through time led Leigh Van Balen to propose the Red Queen hypothesis. Raup and Sipkowski proposed that the rate of this phenomenon fluctuates in 26 million year cycles. Demographic stochasticity or mutational meltdown can increase the risk of this phenomenon below the minimum viable population size. This phenomenon was incorrectly thought to have occurred in Lazarus taxa. A rapid rise in the...
Extinction?
That's right. 10. Your bonus is this equation reduces to the Hagen-Poiseuille equation under laminar flow for 10 points each. Name this equation that describes major head loss during fluid flow in a pipe.
It's the dragon collision.
Or no, Darcy Weisbach.
Answer?
Darcy Weisbach?
That's right. The Darcy friction factor can be calculated as 64 divided by this value for laminar flow. This value is defined as the ratio of inertial forces to viscous forces experienced by a fluid.
It's Reynolds number.
That's right. And Henry Darcy also names a law commonly used to model these things in hydrogeology. The law states that the groundwater flow rate equals product of permeability, area, and pressure drop, all divided by product of viscosity and length for constant elevation.
At first.
That's right, 430. And the final toss-up. In a story from this collection, Sugar McNuts falls off his chair laughing at a story his teacher makes up about Benvenuto Cellini. In another story from this collection, a young boy stares into the face of Christ after nipping his heel on a piece of glass which a priest had broken from a bell tower window. In that story from this book, Reverend Hartman...
Line for go high.
That's it. And your bonus is this ballet's heroine is bitten by a snake that is hidden in a flower basket given to her by Gamzadi for 10 points each. Then this ballet, choreographed by Marius Petipa to music by Ludwig Mikas. The title performer, Nikia, swears her love to Solor but dies in his arms. This is La Bayadere, or the Temple Dancer. After Nikia dies, Solor smokes opium and sees heavenly shades who repeatedly take this ballet position in which the dancer stands on one leg with the other leg held straight behind in the air.
Pirouette.
Arabesque. The heavenly shades of La Bayadere traditionally wear this color. In Tchaikovsky's Swan Lake, Odette is a swan of this color.
White.
Indeed. 410. And that is the game.
Score is 185 to 330.
Who wrote the Scott Fruit one? Who wrote the Scott Fruit one?
I already closed it. I could.
That's okay.
Which one?
Scott Fruit.
Mike Chain.
Who?
Mike Chain.
Which is a thing you can do.